Well, welcome everyone this morning to the Hinckley Institute of Politics. We're so happy to have all you here. So many of our students, so many members of our community. We're happy to have you here. We're happy to have the president of the University of Utah, Taylor Randall, with us this morning as well, and particularly our speaker today, Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson. Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson was elected in 2020, and she serves as the 9th Lieutenant Governor for the state of Utah. There are so many responsibilities that the Lieutenant Governor has. Two primary roles, however. First, serving as our Secretary of State, but as it pertains to our topic today, she serves as the state of Utah's Chief Election Officer as well. As you know, as we talk to our students, voting and the ability to choose our representatives is one of the key foundational principles of our republic. And Lieutenant Governor Henderson is one of the guardians of that principle. In her time of office, she has implemented substantial reforms that have increased voter participation, enhanced transparency, and improved the security of elections across the state. Under her leadership, Utah continues to be a national example of how to conduct elections that are fair, secure, and trusted. We are so glad to have the Lieutenant Governor here today. After her speech, we have some questions that have been submitted that she will answer as well. Please give a hand, Lieutenant Governor Henderson.
Hi, Mom. 2 weeks ago, the FBI intercepted an envelope containing white powder that was mailed to my office from the so-called United States Traitor Elimination Army. This individual or organization mailed similar packages to chief election officers in most states. The suspicious powder is being tested, and the investigation into this threat is ongoing. But one thing is clear. Whether the enclosed substance is toxic or not, this letter was sent with a malicious intent to harm, not me or my staff, but you, the voters. Attacks on our elections and the people who run them are attacks on the political institutions that exist to protect our liberty and free government. As Utah Lieutenant Governor, I am by statute the state's chief election officer. It is my job to oversee elections and ensure that state and federal laws are followed by the 29 independently elected county clerks who run them. Safeguarding the most fundamental right of citizens to vote in free and fair elections is a responsibility that keeps me up at night. These are not the easiest times to administer elections. State law also requires me to provide election information to the public and news media as necessary. Under this banner of stewardship, today I am fulfilling an urgent obligation to provide you with information about Utah elections. I will describe some of the risks to our election processes, outline specific actions you can take to mitigate those risks, and tell you what you can expect in the weeks before and after the election. But before addressing present concerns, it's important to first look at the past. We learn from history. And remembering the principles upon which our nation and state were built is crucial. In fact, this idea is embedded in the Utah Constitution. Article 1, Section 27 declares that frequent recurrence to fundamental principles is essential to the security of individual rights and the perpetuity of free government. The right to vote is a fundamental principle held dear by our state. There's an inseparable link between free representative government and the people's ability to choose their representatives. It was a winding path to get where we are today, with all citizens able to vote under equal protections, regardless of who they are or where they live. But this right was hard-won by the people of Utah. In 1895, a convention was held in Salt Lake City to draft a state constitution. It was Utah's 7th time applying for statehood. The stakes were high, and so were the emotions. 25 years earlier, Utah women became the first in the nation to vote under an equal suffrage law. For 17 years, they enjoyed their privilege until Congress passed a bill outlawing it. Outraged and indignant, Utah women of all ages and political persuasions united toward one goal: to include equal suffrage in the new state constitution. During the Constitutional Convention, the ladies sat among the male delegates on the chamber floor. They had no formal voice in the convention, but they had something far more powerful than words. They had presence. They had resolve. Most importantly, they knew they were right to demand the equality that representative government requires, and they would not be denied it. But some people feared that an equal suffrage plank would make the state constitution too controversial to ratify. It was safer, they said, to just leave women out of the Constitution, gain statehood, and then pass a separate suffrage amendment later. One man even suggested that it would be patriotic for the women to request that the suffrage provision be withdrawn altogether for the good of statehood. But the women did not budge. Ultimately, the delegates were persuaded that if the price of statehood is the disfranchisement of 1/2 of the people, then it is not worth the price. We risked statehood for equal voting rights, for broader access to the ballot. On January 4th, 1896, Utah was admitted to the Union with equal political rights secured in our state constitution. We were only the third state to do so, and it happened 24 years before most women in America could vote. For many years, Utah has worked to take politics out of elections. Now, that sounds like an odd claim, but the legislature truly has built a bipartisan system of election administration that focuses on two primary principles: easier access to the ballot and more secure elections. This system that values both access and security has developed slowly and deliberately over time. When it comes to election administration, we as a state have chosen to value good process over partisan talking points, constitutional rights over arbitrary government obstruction. Utah elections are secure and administered fairly. County clerks are meticulous in their efforts to accurately count all legal ballots, whether they are cast by mail or in person. Not long ago, county clerks and the good local people who ran elections faithfully performed their duties in near anonymity. But today, harassment, intimidation, and threats to election officials are so commonplace that they've become almost unremarkable. This trend should alarm everyone. This is different than legitimate criticism, calls for reform, expressions of grievance or dissent. Attacks against our political institutions are not meant to reform, but to undermine. They're not designed to improve processes or laws, but to subvert them, to instill fear and doubt, harass and intimidate, cause confusion, delay, and chaos. And they always serve to advance a political agenda, not the public interest. Attacks include generating or spreading rumors, misleading information, and false accusations. Such attacks put at risk that fundamental principle of the right to vote that we once valued more than statehood itself. They also distract from instances of true malfeasance that should be dealt with, and stir the passions of those who might feel justified taking matters into their own hands. Over the past few years, our election system has been overwhelmed by demands and disruption from individuals who are best described as election vigilantes, who claim to value the Constitution and rule of law while violating both. Until recently, it's been easy to dismiss these efforts as fringe, but I have grave concerns that the volume and intensity of their destructive efforts are seeping into the center. If mob rule becomes valued more than the rule of law, we risk losing everything. Vigilantism is nothing new. Abraham Lincoln cautioned against the dangers of what he called the mobocratic spirit back in 1838 and preached the fundamental principle of respect for the rule of law. Mob rule hurts everybody. According to Lincoln, even the best citizens are susceptible to the mobocratic spirit because eventually they either give into it or become intimidated into silence. This undermines government institutions, leaving them weak and susceptible to corruption. Let every American, Lincoln said, every lover of liberty, every well-wisher to his posterity, swear by the blood of the Revolution never to violate in the least particular the laws of the country, and never to tolerate their violation by others. Let reverence for the laws become the political religion of the nation. During the last 4 years, there has been more violence and disruption aimed at our political institutions than we have seen in decades. And while we expect these destructive efforts to continue, we have learned a lot in the last 4 years, and we're prepared for it. I want to make sure that you're prepared for it too. In the coming weeks, you will hear that the vote has somehow been rigged and judges are playing favorites. But please remember that heads I win, tails you cheated is not a fundamental principle of a free government. You will hear reporters and debate moderators asking candidates if they will accept the results of the election. An unthinkable question not too long ago. You will hear that vote by mail is less secure than in-person voting and that counting ballots by hand is more accurate than machine. Both claims are demonstrably false. After the election, you will hear rumors of supposed voting irregularities, which are often easily explained, but the truth is much more boring than the rumor. You will be frustrated by having to wait several days, maybe even weeks before you know the results of some races. Please remember that processes and order are necessary components of free and fair elections. It takes time for ballots to be counted, adjudicated, audited, and the election certified. All these processes are open to the public. You will also hear of problems that occurred in various voting jurisdictions. And you know what? That will be true. Any system run by tens of thousands of individuals across thousands of decentralized voting districts throughout the country will experience human error. It happens every time. It always will. But please, please extend some grace to your friends and neighbors in Utah who run our elections. They want nothing more than to ensure that your vote counts accurately, and it will. Today, I call on all Utahns to step up for the good of our state and country with 3 specific actions. First, I ask you to doubt the doubters. Questions and concerns are welcome, but if someone is spreading salacious rumors that shake your confidence in our elections, stop and ask yourself what their motivation could be. Do not participate in undermining public trust in our elections by spreading rumors or unfounded accusations. Doubt the doubters before you doubt the entire election system. Second, commit today to accept the results of the election, no matter what they are. Every race has a winner and loser. You will not like every outcome. But despite what pundits and politicians on both sides are claiming, no matter who wins in November, this will not be our last election. The next one is just around the corner. This is how we do things in the United States of America. And third, take your vote into your own hands. You are ultimately responsible for your own ballot. On October 15th, county clerks will mail ballots to active registered voters. Go to vote.utah.gov. Update your address. Learn about what's on your ballot. Register to vote. And sign up to get notifications sent straight to your phone so you will know when your clerk mails your ballot, receives your ballot, and counts your ballot. As the election nears, you will see more information from my office and your county clerks. Please, please share it. It's our responsibility as citizens of this state and country to ensure that we are spreading true and accurate information to counter the attacks and harm inflicted by self-interested people who care more about their own agendas than they do about your constitutional rights. This effort will take all of us doing our part. I love this state and our nation. I'm honored to be in this position of trust, and I work hard every day to uphold the laws and faithfully serve you, the people of Utah. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Arden. I'm a student here. I'll be answering a few questions that have been previously submitted by students, and then afterward we'll have a media scrum. The first question comes from Marcos. It is being said that the election in about 5 weeks may be the most influential ever. What, as Lieutenant Governor, is your message to those on campus who may not be happy with the candidates on the ballot and want to sit this one out?
Thanks, Marcus. You know, every election is the most important election. This election is the most important election. The next election will be the most important election. And it's said that the will of the people is determined not by those who vote, but by those who show up to vote. So if you don't show up to vote, you can't be part of that will, even if you don't like who's on the ballot, even if you don't think that it matters, if you think that maybe a race is going to go one way no matter what your vote is, it's important to take that step and actually vote. I also want to say it's a presidential election year, and the race for president of the United States always seems to suck up all the oxygen in the room. But it's not the most important race on your ballot. There are a lot of races this year. In Utah, we have a U.S. Senate seat. We have 4 congressional seats. We have all 5 state constitutional officers, governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, state auditor, state treasurer. We've got all 75 members of the Utah House of Representatives. We've got half of the 29 Utah senators that are on the ballot. You've got county races. We've got judicial retention races on the ballot. There's so many things on the ballot that are important that will have a direct, immediate impact on your life. Much, much more important than the president. So get registered, show up, if nothing else, to get in the habit of voting. Don't ever miss that opportunity.
Thank you. Our next question is from Nick. What are you hearing from Utah's local election officials, and what kind of pressures or threats are they facing?
We have some local election officials here in the room. Where are our clerks? We've got 3 of you here. We've got several clerks here. You know, it's not an easy job. Our local election officials, and I hate to speak for them when they're here in the room, but they face a lot of pressure. They are the ones that directly administer elections. They run them, and they hear from their constituents all the time. They show up to their office. Sometimes people who are happy don't always show up to the office. It's usually the ones that are maybe a little bit frustrated or upset about something that are motivated to show up at the office. And so they have to deal with that. But they also have a lot of pressure to make sure that they're following all of the laws and the procedures. And you know what? They do a really good job. They do an incredible job. And those laws and procedures change every single year. And I think that might be one of the most difficult aspects of overseeing elections, is that the laws are constantly changing. But your local election officials, yeah, they face threats, they face harassment, they face intimidation. but it doesn't stop them. They have had to take security measures. We had to pass out PPE, personal protective equipment, throughout the state where they handle mail because of threats of, maybe toxic substances being mailed to election offices. It's happened in the past, and we need to prepare for stuff like that to happen in the future. And so it's not easy, but these folks do it because they love it. They do it because it's their public service, and they're devoted to ensuring that elections are run smoothly.
Thank you. Our next question is from Max. What makes Utah's election system stand out from others around the country, and what are our strengths?
Well, every state does things a little differently. There are federal laws that we all have to follow, but every state has somewhat different processes that are put in place by their state legislatures. Some of those processes are dictated by some states' state constitutions. So the way one state does things is not the way another state is going to do them. Several of the western states do more vote by mail. Utah is one of a handful of states that is a primarily by mail state. And so that's something that's unique in Utah. And it's something that was put in place slowly over time. I think it is a strength, especially these days. Years ago, when I would go vote, I would show up at the local elementary school. You guys remember that? You show up at the elementary school on a Tuesday in the middle of the school year to vote. Well, that's not safe anymore. We can't really do that anymore. And so it's really good for us as a state that we have this very decentralized primarily vote by mail system, because it kind of mitigates some of those risks that are inherent in having specific polling locations, especially if you're worried about disruption or election interference on election day. And so I think it makes it safer from that perspective.
We have two more questions. This question comes from a student here named Alma. Do you think that the rhetoric of a stolen election is less of a worry in the state of Utah than it is in other states?
No. No, I don't. Because we've already seen candidates for the past couple of years in Utah candidates kind of glom on to that narrative. And it's really problematic. Just because you lose an election or your candidate loses an election does not mean that the election was rigged or stolen. But somehow we've come to this point with far too many people that it's not about the process, it's about the outcome. And if the outcome is something that they don't like, then they're going to just question everything. I think that's a really dangerous position to have. It's not healthy. It certainly isn't good sportsmanship. Losing elections, it sucks. It's terrible. I have lost elections. It's not fun, but it's part of the American process. You lose with grace, you win with dignity, and maybe you run again. But if there are problems, very close races. I mean, we had one in the primary this past summer. In the primary of the 2nd congressional district race was very close. It was with a couple hundred votes, and so there was a recount. That's part of the process. Then there was an election contest after that, also part of the process. So we have processes in place if there are legitimate concerns or races that are too close to call. But just throwing it out there, even in advance, that if I don't win, it's because somehow the system was rigged, or even, the idea of these election vigilantes that want to go in and personally inspect every single ballot, personally count all the votes. If you want to verify signatures, if you want to count ballots, then, run for county clerk.
Thank you. And our final question, this comes from a student named Naftali, who I understand is a familiar face. What have the challenges of being the top state election official taught you? How have those lessons influenced how you approach the next election cycle?
Hi, Naftali. This was really part of the job that I wasn't entirely prepared for when I agreed to become then Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox's running mate in 2020. I was in the state Senate. But I don't think there's a better time to be in elections. There's never been a harder time, I don't think. There's never been a better time. And one thing I tell my staff all the time is nothing worth doing is easy. This is not easy, but it is absolutely worth doing. And we learn from past mistakes. I think we also have this sense that we're never done improving. We like to brag about how well we do things in Utah. We like to brag about how great our election system is, but it isn't perfect. It's not that there isn't room. There's always room for improvement, and we're always looking for ways to make things better and in meaningful ways. And so that's what I've learned. It's hard work, but it's important work, and we're always hoping to be able to find ways to do it better.
Thank you for that. We'll now turn the time over to a media scrum, and any students who need to leave right now are welcome to leave, and then we'll conduct a media scrum. Thank you very much.
Thanks, you guys. I don't know where I go for the media scrum. Do I just stay here?